So next up, we're going to take a look at how to create the presentation layer or the view layer. And along the way, we're also going to take a trip down how to implement the controller layer as well. And we're going to take a look at a lot of front-end aspects. So let's go ahead and get started because this is a pretty big section. All right, so within our gradebook web module, we're going to be doing a lot of different stuff with it. We know the gradebook web module is going to contain our portlet component. Portlet component is used for implementing our UI as well as implementing the controller layer. Along the way, we're also going to be taking a look at how we implement the controller layer using MVC commands and the MVC design pattern. So 7 big steps we're going to be progressing through. We're going to start off by creating that gradebook web module. We're going to see how to provide localization or internationalization. We'll go ahead and implement some of our portlet actions through MVC commands. We'll take a look at our JSPs and see how we can use various tag libraries to help us out with some commonly used aspects of the JSP world. We'll take a look at how we're able to implement validation and feedback. So making sure what's entered is valid, is correct, and providing a message or feedback to our end user, either success or unsuccessful. We'll go ahead and add some CSS after that and throw in some JavaScript to make things a little bit more fun. Let's start off. We're going to be talking about internationalizing our application. That's a mouthful there. So 2 terms we want to define here. We have internationalization. The idea here is creating our application in a way that's not hard-coded or hardwired to just one language. And then we have localization, the idea of adding support to various applications. Now you might be thinking, hey, this isn't something I'm going to need to do. I only need to support my application in English. We're still going to cover this topic as we're going to be exposing some good patterns, some good design along the way. So still a very important concept, even if we're not going to be using multiple languages. So with the idea of internationalization, there are 2 big terms, 2 big aspects to it. We have these things called language keys and language resource bundles. Let's take a look at each one. So we're going to start off with language keys. The language keys within Liferay is represented by a file called language.properties. What we do in this file is we're mapping key value pairs. So throughout our JSPs, we're going to have a specific key. And then the value of that key is what we want to display back over to our end user. So key value done for our various languages. Language files, right, are the various files that we can have to support different languages. So by default, we have one called language.properties. But suppose you do want to support multiple languages, maybe English, French, Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, list goes on and on. So what we can do is we can create a language file for each one of those different languages. So the idea here is as we switch the language in Liferay, Liferay will pick up the language file corresponding with the language it's going to display and then display the corresponding translation defined inside of that language file. So all of these language files, whether we create them or they're auto-created, are typically stored in the location source main resources content. And we'll take a look once we create our gradebook web. And as we are going through, one thing to note is this is all done using UTF-8 encoding. So language keys are the actual key value pairs inside the language file. So how this all works behind the scenes. So when we're creating our language files, we create it as language underscore followed by a language code. The language code is defined by one of these two standards, ISO 639-1 or the ISO 3166. So for English, for example, it will be EN, French is FR, Spanish is ES, and then you can look up the rest. So if we're creating these language files for multiple languages, we need to identify what is the shorthand of our language based off of one of these specific standards. So how do we make our application, our portlet, aware of these language files or these language resources? It's actually pretty straightforward. All we need to do is head up to our component annotation of the portlet, and then we just let it know through a property inside of the component. Here on this screen here, we provide what that property is. So tack on the specific property and then add the value to the specific language property file you want to add. So an example here, we have our portlet component here at the top, and in the component annotation, we set the property javax portlet resource bundle is equal to the path in which our language file is at, typically content and then language.properties. So that's part one. Part two, over in our JSP, we have a specific key there, hello-stranger, and we can provide the value of that key down in the language.properties file. So hello-stranger is equal to hello with a capital H and then stranger. And then we can go on and on with this. If we wanted to provide a translation for French, you can say language underscore FR dot properties, have the key hello stranger, and then the value would be the French equivalent. And then you just go on and on. So localizing our portlet or application is also pretty important as well. You can follow the pattern up here towards the top, javax.portlet portlet name field .portlet ID equals the translation that you want to provide. So a couple different values that you can provide for the portlet name field, right? Could be description, display name, short title, title. Okay, so for example, we have our javax.portlet.display name for the gradebook web, and the translation we want to display is gradebook portlet. Now, behind the scenes, using I18N, one of the standards that helps us with our localization, kind of a long story short here, what we're basically doing is we are going to be trying to pick up our language.property file, or our resource bundle as we're going to be calling it. So down here at the bottom, using the @reference annotation, we are instantiating a resource bundle loader based off of this specific OSGI bundle. So this is just an example. From there, we have a specific string like hello stranger, and from the resource bundle loader, right, we're going to be trying to get that specific key from our language.property file. And we'll do the same thing for the second key as well. So once we have that, we're basically, after that, trying to get the value of the key value pair in our resource bundle or our language.properties. It's kind of the long story short. Okay. One of the things that we can do as well is we can share our language.property files or share our resource bundles. So the way that we can do so is in part with the bnd.bnd file, right? We can add this line of code here and then add the name of the bundles that contain our language.property file. So the whole idea here is you can have one master OSGI bundle that contains all of the language.property files, and then you can have different OSGI bundles, kind of bring them in. The idea of modularity here. Whew. All of that to say, internationalization is more than just, oh, I want to provide different languages for my application. Even if we only supported one language, the other side of the coin is that we're creating a very good design pattern for future support. If we wanted to change the name of things, we can do so over in these language.property files rather than looking through lots and lots of JSPs to find that specific string to modify. So all of that summed up, not just about other languages, but also about good design pattern, providing a very loosely coupled relationship between our terms that we want to display and how we can actually display them. So let's take a look here. Let's go ahead and we're going to be creating the Gradebook Web module. And then as we do, we'll be taking a look at the language.property files along the way. So we'll first create it, and then we'll modify and create some of these language.property files, for example. So the steps that we're going to be taking, we will first create the module project using the MVC portlet template. We'll then modify the component annotation, adding any properties that are needed. We'll then provide the language.property files or localization resources deployed to see something and test it out. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at what it takes to make all of this happen.